Hey guys, it's Casie Casem with Change the Face of Depression, and this is my podcast, Take Off the Mask, also known as TOTM. Take Off the Mask is a place where no ground is too deep. We have raw interviews with real people making an impact, impacting the world in a better way than the world impacted us. Some of this is tough to hear. Listeners' discretion is advised. For more episodes and to find out how you can help change the face of depression, check us out at www.changethefaceofdepression.com or ctfod.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. Welcome to Take Off the Mask with Casie Casem. Today, we are diving into a conversation that is as heavy as it is necessary. Grief and how it intertwines with depression. Loss sometimes changes us, and the weight of it is so profound that it pulls us into a place we never expected to be. Today, I have with me my dear friend, Lauren, who's been walking through the unimaginable. Grief and the loss of her daughter, Edie. Lauren, thank you so much for being here today and for allowing us into your heart.
Thanks for having me, Casie. I appreciate you asking, genuinely.
I am so happy that you're here, buddy. It is so great to see you. I have known Lauren for longer than I haven't. That's actually really cool to say. I've gotten to see you in so many different places in life since we were kids to high school, growing up. I've kept in touch with you over social media. I've watched you grow a beautiful family, get married, have a husband that I've watched you love over Facebook, and got to see a glimpse inside of your beautiful life. And I just want to take a moment and say that there is no right way to grieve, and there is no perfect way to talk about it. This is a safe space for you, Lauren, and for anyone listening who might be navigating loss in their own way.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Before we get into the depths of grieving and healing, who was Edie? Can you tell us about her? What would you say is the joy that she brought to your life? Of course, she was your daughter, and I'm sure that was a beautiful, beautiful relationship that you got to have being a mom. But what made Edie Edie? What about the little things that made her uniquely her?
I don't think of little things so much as one big thing. So when you sent me the notes so we could kind of navigate what we may or may not talk about, I made one note and it's wild and I circled it. That was the only note I made to describe Edie. And I'm thankful that for whatever reason, I think early on, like when I lost her, I did go through a little bit of the guilt of, I should have been more patient with her. I should have been this and I should have been that. But in general, I'm a pretty self-aware person. So I've been very able to be honest with myself about what she was, and wild was it. I've had a couple of people since our loss, like they'll see me in the grocery store with my boys and they'll be like, didn't you want a girl or whatever? And I just kind of can, instead of letting that hurt or overtake, I can just kind of snicker and be like, okay, I got my girl. And there was no guarantee that she was going to be dainty or prim or proper because she was wild. So I have two boys. So my kids were every 2.5 years. So I have, and they are all like just the birth order psychology in a nutshell. So I have my super dutiful, plays by the rules firstborn, and I have my kind of crazy, aloof secondborn who's so sweet. I don't understand a thing about him, but he's so sweet. And then it was her, and she threw me on my butt. Like she just, she acted like it was her job to disagree with me. I mean, that was her existence. And she was hilarious and fun. And Very, very, both my firstborn and my thirdborn, so my oldest and Edie were all very, very vocal. So that was kind of one of the harder parts of the loss is that she was always talking. And so immediately I could hear, like even when she wasn't there, I could still hear her arguments. Like I could hear her, like I would say something and I'd already defensively be like preparing my like explanation of, or like my because I told you so or whatever, because I could already anticipate the argument, the kickback that I was getting from her. And so I don't hear that anymore, and that's hard. But yes, she was a Spitfire. I jokingly said, because Edie's story kind of began, when I was pregnant with her, we got a heart diagnosis, and um, don't mistake that to think that she was like an invalid child, because we forgot all the time she was remotely sick because she was just a bulldozer. But I jokingly said, like, you all prayed the word fighter way too hard. Like everyone that prayed for her wanted her to be a fighter, and like I was the one that got to live with the fighter. And anyway, so she was just a lot, and she was precious, but she was a lot, just wild. That's the word.
Oh man, I love that so much. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's so good. I hope that somebody says that about me one day. It's funny. So you got a diagnosis when you were pregnant.
I did. So I don't recommend going to appointments alone ever, even if you think that they're mundane and routine, because that's what it was. And I sat there alone and found out that one of the ventricles in her heart did not form. Um, so we were so fortunate, though. I mean, like literally, just medicine in general is just wild what they're able to do. I mean, we went to appointments where we basically were just told again and again by cardiologists, this is what your months after she's born look like. And they were that to a T. So we knew like what she was a hypoplast. So that's what you call like the non-forming of the ventricle. She did not have her left ventricle. And so she was what's called an HLHS baby, or hypoplastic left heart syndrome.
Oh,
And so there was never a question of like, if her first surgery goes well, there won't be a second. It was never that. So there's like 3 conjunctive surgeries. And so we always knew this arc that was going to be our next few years. And she was textbook. I mean, you like, someone comes to, you take your kids to just their like routine appointments and they're like weighing them, and you like all of a sudden feel like you're taking a hog to the fair. And it's like, yes, this is my prize hog. And she was that, like, she was just doing so well in her heart journey. And the doctors would come and they'd always kind of just almost shake their head like, she's doing great. Like, I don't know what to tell you other than she's just doing great. And so I think that's why it was very, very easy for us to just not treat her sickly, because she wasn't. She was just rough and tumble and, doing all the things that kids should be doing. But on top of that, though, yes, we had lived this journey of just a village of people covering her in prayer and thoughts. And that was just a really, really cool thing to be a part of. Just how people that didn't know your children took ownership of your child by, just watching her story. But yes, we knew just very much what the progression of our life was going to look like for a while, or we thought.
Yeah, well, that was actually going to lead me into my next wonder was, so you thought, so this is with her being textbook, and I apologize, Lauren, I'm trying to be very sensitive about this, but this is a beautiful conversation opening that we can, like, I'd love to go into what happened. I'd love to go into respectfully, was this something that
Not a lot of people ask, and it's funny. There's something very, very therapeutic to talking about it, because my husband and I are two of the only people that know this. And so, and it's not, I'm kind of an open book kind of person.
Mm.
And so it's almost like one of those things that it's like, you don't want to creep people out. Like, do you want to hear how my daughter died? And when, like humor
Yes.
them. in the room.
Yep.
But I think it's an important thing to share though, because it's very much a part of, I think people assume,
Mhm.
oh, they had a sickly child. Like Casie, my daughter passed on a Wednesday morning, and Tuesday night she was chasing her brothers at flag football practice and made me put flags on her hips. Like, I mean, there was no indication whatsoever. Um, and so yes, I mean, she had had two very, very, very scheduled surgeries. She was slated to have a third. The third one basically was like, which is really cool. It was going to be her not long after she turned 3, probably. And the basis for when that one was going to happen was her surgeon, like that was his sweet spot. Like, I like the size of the child at this time, and then also like that they're not going to be old enough to kind of fight back. I mean, like, it was just a really cool thing. Like, surgeons have a craft, and for him, 3 years old was the sweet spot of when he wants to perform this surgery. For another surgeon, it may have been 8 or 9 or whatever. So I thought that was really cool to just hear that he has a skill and he has a preference and he's experienced. Obviously, he's touching my child. So that was really comforting to hear that he had a comfort zone with when he wanted to do that surgery. So we had done her birthday was in December. We had done her third birthday party in November, knowing that we were probably about from December to spring going to kind of shelter in place to keep us all well, knowing she was going to need surgery and they wouldn't do it if she was sick. So we didn't want any of us during cold and flu season to get cold and flu. So her birthday party we did in late November. Her birthday was early December. Was kind of, we called it the theme. I had asked her what she'd wanted the theme to be. I mean, she had gone through a million things. She wanted a monster themed birthday party. She probably wanted a Cheeto themed birthday party. I mean, like just 2-year-old random stuff or whatever. But we finally landed. She had said she wanted a heart party. And I said, we're going to do a heart party, baby. I said that because obviously she didn't know, but because we had not started to talk to her about it. But it was kind of our last hoorah before what was going to be her third surgery. And so we had her little heart birthday party. That was the theme. I had her these little wooden hearts. I ordered them and she colored them in crayons. And we kind of hung them on an ornament tree at her party, and everyone took one with them. And that was kind of the party favor, but with the request, like, please, remember to pray for our girl. She has this surgery coming up, and we have no reason to believe it's not going to go as great as her other ones have. But, you've been with us this far. Like, please just take your little ornament and think of us and think of her and, just lift her up. And so we did. We had it. It was such a full day. It was she felt so old that day all of a sudden, because it was just like she understood this sense of, whereas she was kind of a stinker, she kind of knew she needed to be the hostess that day. And so she was just sweet and she circulated and talked to everybody. And it was just such a good day. I will tell you this is a weird little detail that I remember and will never forget. I accidentally bought her a 2 candle instead of a 3 candle, because in my mind she was 2, not 3. And so she blew out a 2 candle and she never turned 3. And like, that's just a weird, hard thing. I don't know why, like little things you get stuck in your head, But anyway, so she ended up passing 2 days before her actual birthday. So we had her birthday party like the last week of November, right before Thanksgiving. And then, so her birthday was December 9th. She passed on December 7th. I don't know what to tell you what happened. We don't know. It was a Wednesday morning. Like I said, we had been at flag football practice Tuesday night. We typically eat like old people, like 4:30, 5 o'clock, but we ate after practice that night. We ate spaghetti. And then the next morning, Wednesday morning, she had thrown up in her bed. And I thought, we ate like late last night and we ate heavy, like that's all. Because she was fine. I put her in the bath. And then she's in the bath and she's just acting like she wants to get out of the bath, like just acting a little like just kind of fussy. And it's like she's nauseous and she doesn't know how to articulate it. She's about to throw up again. So I put her in front of the toilet right there, and she sits down, which in and of itself was like, something's wrong. She just didn't ever stop. And she sits next to me and she just lays on me and she's just lethargic, like just strangely lethargic. And I called Josh, my husband, and I said, do me a favor, head home. Like, and I'm not a reactor, to be honest, but like it was just so out of the ordinary for her to be, you know, she wouldn't sleep without kicking and screaming. I mean, it was just she was active. And so I tried, like, kind of step one with a heart baby is you try to get their oxygen level, their ox sat, and you our pulse ox would not register her oxygen level. And so I laid here on our couch holding her, kind of enjoying it, like, because I never really got to do that because she was just a spunky 2-year-old that was never sitting. And my husband got home. We still couldn't get the oxygen level. And he's like, is she milking something? Like, we thought, is she getting a cold? Is she getting the flu? Like, and she's just like liking the snuggles and, we'll take them when we can get them. And so we talk about it and we're like, listen, she's going to make an idiot out of us. We'll go pay a hospital copay, but I'm not comfortable not having her oxygen level. So we're just going to take her for that reason alone, kind of just to find out what her saturation is. And I mean, by the time we got there, she was just that much more loopy and lethargic. And we laughed. We were walking her into the hospital, and my husband was holding her, and she kind of sat up and just grabbed his face. And we were like, is she being silly? Or is she like, I mean, we were so, I just had no idea what to think about it. And then, I mean, because of her condition, they pretty immediately got us into a triage room in the ER. And I laid in the bed with her, and I mean, her oxygen was extremely low when they got it, but they were just in all of the kind of fact-finding stages in the beginning. And at some point she's laying on me, and I looked at my husband and I said, what is going on? Like what is happening right now? And he just kind of was like, Lauren, don't worry. And I mean, we probably hadn't, I don't know the time of it, but I mean, I know. So this was on a Wednesday. On Monday, my husband had taken off work and we had Christmas shopped all day. And I remember thinking on Wednesday, like we had almost had these like kind of two mirroring days of like my husband being home on a weekday where he wouldn't have ordinarily been. But the Wednesday was so much shorter than the Monday, and we came home without our daughter. So really, all in all, we were maybe at the hospital for probably less than 2 hours, and she was gone. Like I'm laying in the hospital bed with her, and I just yelled at one point because I just felt her fading on me. I felt her body just becoming limp, and I just yelled, somebody do something. They kicked me out of the bed, and then they took her to another room, and we followed. And she began to code, and we just watched them try to resuscitate her for probably 20 minutes. And then them very gently and very kindly explained to us that they were doing more harm than good at that point, and that we were just saying goodbye at that moment.
Wow. Could you walk me through that?
there's not, there's not a lot to walk through. It was the fastest, slowest moments of my life. I remember, so my husband, and he was so ashamed of this, but I'm sure so many parents can imagine doing the exact same thing. My husband was on the floor, pretty much passed out. And so a nurse helped him into a bed that was also in the room. And then she was, I mean, I look over, he's shirtless. I mean, they're trying everything to kind of keep him awake. So I went over to the bed where they were working on her. I started to sing. You know, I thought maybe if she heard me sing, I
What were you
prayed.
singing? What were you singing?
I was probably singing Into the Garden. It's an old hymn I've always sung my kids at bedtime. We had someone sing it at her service. I probably sang You Are My Sunshine. I prayed and prayed. I shouted, to the Lord over and over again. I said, just show them what you can do. And I felt the need almost. I remember saying, her name's Edie. We call her Edie girl. Like, not as though I ever doubted that she was getting the care she needed, but it's like I just wanted them to know, like, she's not just a body, she's Edie. Um, Nurses were crying. They were, taking turns with the compressions and things. And then some of them weren't wanting to stop, and others were making them because, I'm sure there's protocol with that they don't go a certain time because they had to have been exhausted. And then eventually, just the doctor said, like, we have to stop. And I didn't argue or I never felt like I needed to tell anyone what to do differently. There were times after I lost her that I almost felt like, was it my passivity that that lost her? Yeah. But I was very quickly able to stop that line of thought, and I'm thankful for that. I'm very, very thankful. I don't feel like I've had a lot of unhealthy thought patterns in that way. Even just watching people work on her, it was a blessing. Like, to see them so upset when she passed, it was a comfort in a weird way, to just know that. I mean, I would say to anyone that was encountering anyone going through deep grief, like, just telling someone you are so, so sorry is never a bad idea. Like, not telling them, this reminds me of the time, this, like, I'm so sorry this has happened to you, is never a bad thing. It's never a bad place to start. And those women, those nurses and that doctor, they were genuinely so sorry for us. And after she passed, I told my husband, I said, I know there's going to be a lot of things that are so hard to navigate, but this first step, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can leave her here. And I'm so thankful for him. You know, he just said, but Lauren, we have to. And he said, because we were in the room alone at this point, he said, let's not put her down. Let's hand her to somebody.
Yeah.
Um, and so we got a nurse and we said, we're prepared to leave, but we're not prepared to leave her by herself. And so we handed her to a nurse. And it just almost felt like everything about her in that moment felt like she genuinely felt like it was an honor to take her.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a blessing. It was. I know it's weird, but it was.
I understand that. Like I do I feel that. What was the after you gave Edie to the nurse and you left the room? What does that look like? Going home, the car ride, the first night?
Yeah. So we got in the car, just walking to the car. It was a beautiful day. The sun was shining, and you're just like, how dare you? How dare you shine, sun? And even just the walking down the hallways, or no, I mean, I guess we didn't do much of that, but just walking back to the parking garage. There's hundreds of people there that are there for that are there for work and routine appointments and this and that, and you just want to scream like, do you have any idea what just happened to me? And so we get in the car, and I got back in the back seat like I had ridden to the hospital with her. I laid my head in her car seat. I don't remember how much we talked or didn't. I do remember, just little kind of revelations coming to mind for whatever reason, and I'm thankful they did, and just saying them to Josh. But I think one of the only ones I remember saying to him on the way home, I just said, I don't want her room closed up. Like, I know that there are people who would want that. And so it was just important for me to tell him. And so he knew, in case he felt differently too, I wanted to respect that. But, I said, people will be in our home. Kids can play in her room. Our kids can play in her room. Like, I don't want her room closed. I didn't want a tomb in my house, And so we got home. No, we didn't get home. My boys were with my mom, who lives about a mile away from me, and we had to stop on the way home and tell them. We had to tell my mom before we told them. I can remember my mom meeting us in her garage, and her just being like, looking at us like, why are you here? And us just shaking our head and having nothing to say, and her just absolutely losing it, as you can imagine. And then her having to kind of collect herself back together, because we, told her, like, we have to go inside and we have to talk to these boys.
Mm-hmm.
So we did. At that point, so they would have been 5 and 7, our boys. So my oldest is Elliot, the middle is Henry. I sit them down and I tell them together. The 7-year-old, he immediately starts crying, And then the 5-year-old kind of giggled at the fact that the 7-year-old was crying. Like, I mean, it was just, he's basically a toddler himself, it was just an awkward moment for him and he didn't understand. And then, watching a child laugh at that is just a awkward feeling. And then, you're just constantly having to, just through every moment like that, just remind yourself of the reality of the situation. Like, this is a small child that doesn't understand. And then ironically, the reverse has kind of been the case since, my older one is far less sad than my younger one. And I think my younger son struggles as much with the not remembering, as like, I think he feels robbed memories.
Yeah.
Um, my older one, he's a firstborn. He's very black and white. He's very, and it's funny because when I told them that Edie had passed, and I instantly felt like I had denied them something, because we never in a million years thought we weren't coming home with her. Worst case scenario, we thought we might be admitted. But like, I took their sister and I didn't come home with her. And so, whereas we got to sit and hold her as long as we wanted. I mean, not, but we got time and things like that. Like, they saw a crazy little girl leave their house and then had to take our word for it that she was really never coming home.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I told them, right as I told them, I said, listen, your little bodies are not going to be like mommy and daddy. Like, our body is going to remind us pretty constantly that we're sad, but your bodies are still going to want to play. And that's okay, or whatever. And then I can remember them doing it and me being like, you freaks, I didn't mean it. Like, why are you not sad all the time like me? Like, I was having a mature moment. I didn't mean it though. Like, come on, like, let's all wail all the time, please. But that's definitely an element I've had to navigate. I've hidden my sadness from them because I don't think that they're built to be sad like we are all the time. But then I wonder why they're not sad, and I've hidden my sadness from them, so I've definitely gotten, like, grief is not something you want to learn how to do, but it's something you have to learn how to do if you want to do it healthily. And so, I've learned to just talk to them about, some days I'll be like, guys, listen, like, if I was short with you earlier, I'm sorry. Like, some days I feel a lot sadder than others, and just talking to them about that, or, just stopping trying to just put on brave face all the time, because like, they're at the point too that their bodies are about to start throwing a whole lot of emotions their way that they don't understand. And like, I have every opportunity to show them that there are good and bad ways to cope with that. And so,
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And that it is okay to grieve, no matter how long it's been, no matter how long it's been, forever.
Yeah.
That is a great segue to my next question. What has grief looked like for you? Do you allow yourself that time to, like, you mentioned hiding your grief. So what does that look like?
I think every bad thing probably heightens every element of your personality as it is. I'm not good at asking for help. And so I think that was something I had to get good at, because I found out very, very early that it wasn't just my grief. It's my grief in a different way. It's my grief in a way that only I know and only I can know, and it's only mine to bear. But it's a lot of other people's grief too. And they find a lot of solace in being able to help me. And so, whereas, ask that friend that literally has said 100 times she would love to have my boys over with her boys, let her do it. Let me have an afternoon where I get to lay down and stare at a wall like my body feels like it wants to do all the time, you know. And so letting them do that, letting, God, people, there's so much backstory to kind of why I genuinely felt, and my worldview is a Christian worldview, so that's obviously the lens through which I genuinely believe, like, just I saw the Lord's provision and just how, just kind of the arc of our lives even before we lost her. But my husband and I, just the growth and maturity we had reached before we had lost her, like, had it happened 5 years earlier, I genuinely would have felt more at home staying with her body in the hospital than coming home with him. He just, so just the growth we saw before and how it paved the way to how we would handle it together versus apart, and how we had already just opened so many more lines of communication than we ever had in our marriage, so that, I know we'll probably talk about it more, just the actual depression aspect. But like, I had struggled with depression before, just postpartum and just depression in general. I always had, but in the other instances in our marriage, I think my husband thought that ignoring my depression almost like gave me dignity, like it was like, if we don't talk about it, then it won't embarrass her or something. And then, just all of the progress we had made before Edie passed just paved the way to him knowing that's not the case. Like, I need to check on her. I need to talk to her. We need to talk this out. We need to talk about what her preferences are about, people, and what we're doing or what we're needing to say no to, and things like that. And so, how it has actually looked, I don't know that I could say, expectations is a strong word, because I think we've all let our mind creep to the dark places we shouldn't, of what if this was my reality, or you've just, you've let yourself there because of empathy from reading something of something happening to someone else. But I don't think anyone, and I don't think they should, truly puts their mind in the place of having lost a child until it happens. And so, I think when it's your reality, though, you come home from the hospital and you look at two boys in the face and you see, like, stopping is not an option, and I had two boys at home, and I hate to think that if I didn't have two boys at home, would I have thought that my husband wasn't worth getting out of bed for? Would I have felt that I wasn't worth getting out of bed for, And so, having other children obviously was a blessing, but I don't think, if you find yourself in a situation of grief and you're single, it doesn't mean that you are less worth getting out of bed for. Like, health is just worth it. Like, doing the next thing that you think you can't do is worth it. And that's what grief has ultimately been. It's just been, I call them, I've said from nearly immediately, anyone that tried to talk to me about it, it always felt like it was like, I know it's not the same thing as you, or it's, we haven't gone through what you have, and it's like, there's no disclaimer necessary. Like, we do not compare griefs. Like, my grief is real to me, your grief is real to you, and it needs to be dealt with either way. Like, whether, like, we don't, it doesn't need to be on a spectrum. It doesn't need to be on a scale. It needs to be handled. It needs to be lived. It needs to be, worked through. And so, obviously I don't think that there's any need in comparing griefs, but it is, I think it's both healthy, but just also realistic to acknowledge that different types of losses are going to yield different needs and struggles. And so mine was a sudden loss. And I know that, like, someone feeling ripped from your life is a little different than watching someone decline. I don't envy someone that has watched someone wither away. But there is an element, like, I've had grandparents that I've just watched in pain. And it's like there was an element with them of, like, when they finally passed, there was that little bit of relief for them. And so with sudden loss, I think the things I didn't, like, you just asking me about what happened, like, literally, you don't understand. And really, it's only yours to understand, but that person that has had sudden loss has had endless landmines to walk around and to navigate every second of every day, because it's just like I said, I literally, the first several things that I said out loud after I lost her, I could hear her arguing with me. It's like and it's just like, so obviously that sudden loss, it's a little harder to believe early on. It being a child, you realize very, very quickly it's real, because you're right, your entire job description changes. I can remember a lot of times I would leave things right outside her bedroom door when she was napping or sleeping. A clean pair of socks, her shoes, whatever. And it was just meant to be put away when she got up next. I couldn't put those things away for days, because it was like when I did, there were no more pending tasks for her, and somebody came over, and because I had said, kids are welcome in her room, they can play. I think her daughters had played in the room. She cleaned up after them and she put those things away. I'm glad she did, because I don't know when I would have, and there's just so many things like that. I still haven't touched her room. I don't know when I will. I'm thankful I didn't make it a mausoleum, because that would just add another element of when is the right time to do this. I didn't take her car seat out of my car for probably a year. I let other kids ride in it, that were size appropriate. It wasn't like, don't you touch that. It wasn't that. It wasn't like all things Edie or off limits, but it was just like, I can't bring myself to do it. And, Josh would just tell me, there's going to be a time we have to take it out because it's a need, and then we're just not going to put it back in. And he was right, but it took me 2 times. We took it out one time to take a bunch of boys with us somewhere, and I was like, maybe next time. And I put that stupid car seat back in my car. And then the next time I did it, none of that's right or wrong, but it's something that you didn't expect to have to navigate, that you have to navigate something new every single day, every single moment. It's now, it's, the struggles are kind of the opposite. Like, I don't remember what it was like for her to be in the rhythm of our house. I'm losing that more and more. It's of no consequence that I don't remember that. It doesn't make me less of a mom. It doesn't make me, it doesn't change anything about what she was to us, but it hurts, I remember the first time she would go to bed probably an hour, hour and a half before my boys. And we would always stay up and watch something together or play something together or read something together in the living room. And then when the boys would have to go back to their room from the living room, they would pass her room. So when we would tell them, all right, go get back in bed, I'd always say, quiet feet, quiet feet. Like, don't all the way back to your room, past her room. And I said quiet feet once after she was gone. And, just lost. There's no need for quiet feet anymore. But it only happened once and I never said it again. And then, just recounting that now, like, I don't remember them needing quiet feet. So just things like that are really tough. But grief has also surprised me, though, in just the way people surround you. I mean, I cannot, I would be remiss not to just talk about just the way we have been held. I mean, just Casie, the way people have we didn't cook for 2 months after she died. You're a mom, that's like the most embarrassing thing to admit that will derail you, like totally derail you, like what's for dinner. I didn't have to think about that for 2 months. 1 year after she passed, someone I have never met before sent our family $100 eating out gift card. Like, I don't know them. Like, eating out is something that is difficult for our family to do. I mean, it's in 2025, I imagine it's difficult for everyone to do, but I mean, like, how incredible is that? And just so many things. I mean, I'm looking at a like Valentine's garland that my friend made. It's like these felt hearts with pictures of us and her, for like the first Valentine's Day after she passed, or maybe the second. And I'm not a cutesy holiday person or whatever. And it's like my friend was able to anticipate that all of the milestones are now going to be hard, whether you're a Valentine's person or not. And she was right. And it's something that my boys, like, and probably that she couldn't have even anticipated, that I'm not going to have the energy to make these things as fun for my children as I should. And so we have this sweet little thing to decorate our house with that they love looking at. And just, I mean, I could tell you just a million ways that people have just held us. And anyway, I feel like you haven't talked in 30 minutes.
No, I am soaking up this. I'm soaking it up. I really love how much I'm learning and getting to have just a glimpse. One thing that you actually opened a whole lot of conversations for me. One of my next questions was going to be, have you had moments where you felt like you wouldn't be able to survive this? I would love to go back to what you were talking about as far as the boys and having to get up for them. I am no means trying to relate to this at all, but you are familiar with my story. And my grandma, after she lost my mom, I watched her never be able to get out of bed again. Never. And all of my aunts, even to this day, my grandma's been passed away 5 years, and they're still very saddened they feel like they lost so much from their lives because she wasn't able to carry on for them. And so I think that, man, there's such a part, like there's a part of me where I understand, like, nope, I never want to understand how you feel. I can understand it, but I never want to experience it. I never want to experience that. So I can understand how my grandma was that way. And I can also see and understand that sadness that my aunts feel, because they take it so, I'm going to say they take it so personally, like they weren't worth her continuing to live for.
Why wasn't I worth living for?
Yep. Why wasn't I worth living for? And it's so twofold, because it's not that they weren't worth living for. It's that grief that she had was so great that she didn't understand how to navigate it. And so she felt like not living anymore. Um, is there anything that you have that you could share or speak on that?
There has, like, I don't know that there has ever been a time where I thought I won't survive this. There's been a time where I haven't wanted to. Um, I mean, I've whispered the words "Jesus come" more than once, probably more than 50 times. Um, I think the shortcut that I use, my boys didn't ask for this,
Yeah.
you know. Um, they didn't ask for this, but there's a whole lot to teach them through this.
Yeah.
Um, and again, and you never want to judge how someone else grieves. You don't. But I think we do, and I think we live in a world that you're not allowed to tell anyone anything hard.
Mhm.
I don't think we're good for that. Like, I don't think, like, Casie, some days I just had to make my bed, the stupid
Yeah.
like commencement speech that like I had to make my bed. Like,
Yeah.
because if I
That's real
didn't, I
though.
would stay in it.
Yeah.
And that was how my body responded to grief. I could have slept 20 hours a day,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't let myself. They didn't ask for this. I homeschool my boys. I should have said that. So not only was their mental health, it felt like under my under my umbrella of care, but their education also falls to me, which is terrifying. Um, so but it was very easy to doubt that I was capable of doing that after she passed. But I also got to tell myself that that same thing that makes me feel totally inadequate and makes me feel um, like a chicken with my head cut off most days is the same thing that afforded them spending every single day with their sister of her life, you know? Um, so honestly, like for me, and just like with depression in the past, like I call them mental shortcuts. Like I need them. Like I need quick reminders that put me back to the perspective that I know that I want, not the one that comes naturally, not the one that it's the one that I know that the best version of myself wants for the best version of myself,
Yeah.
you know? And so I had another friend tell me the same. Her mom's younger brother passed very young, and they, almost kind of did a reverse thing. The parents like then kind of poured their life into making the loss purposeful, that they got so caught up in counseling other people that they kind of neglected their home life. And so the daughter was like left to her own devices while they went and counseled the rest of the world. And so, no, I mean, I feel very, very blessed, and that like I've just recently gone back to work this year, but I was also not working. Um, I'm not so ignorant as to think that every had this happened at every chapter of my life, could I not be working? But it did give me space, just a very, very nurturing space to process at a snail's pace,
Yeah.
what feels like a snail's pace, um, but then to just, I don't know. I just, you say that there's no right way to grieve, and that's true, but there are wrong ways. There are really unhealthy things. Um, that anyone who's going through grief can tell you it would be very, 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 very easy to succumb to. Um, so my thing is that like find your mental shortcuts that just like get you back. Um, but then also try to make space for, very, very short stints of giving in to that thing that your body wants to do, like, sleep all day long or whatever. I haven't done it yet because the nature of it is I have to plan it if I'm going to do it. But I've told my husband, I said, at some point I need a hotel night. Like I need to go literally stay somewhere and where I am nothing to anyone and maybe stare at a wall for 24 hours or maybe write or maybe go sit on a park bench next to a 90-year-old man and have a cute banter. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I need that at some point. And he's like, Lauren, do it. And I'm like, but I have to plan it. And nothing is more overwhelming in the midst of, everything. Like I said, everything about your personality is exasperated with grief. And so I'm not a great planner as it is. And now it just feels like a dark cloud knowing if I have to plan anything. So, but I will do it at some point.
Oh yeah. It's so funny. I completely relate to that. I understand like the want to do that. But then whenever you're able to do that, you don't want to. It's like, but I
Yeah.
don't need it right this second. I want it. Like that's my ideal is to just go and lay on a park bench for like 3 days and have the
Mm-hmm.
world just continue to revolve without me. And then I'll just come right back, like hit pause. But
Yeah.
like I don't want to do it right this very second.
But it's also like the time that you have the mental capacity to plan it is not the time you need it. It's the
Yeah.
time that you are like spiraling or like wanting to be in fetal position that it's like, oh, did I not plan this vacation 2 months ago that anticipating this moment? And no, it's, and that's not reality and it's not feasible, but, I think one of my things I would say too is just my husband would tell me to go and to do those things, but that's not always the case. Like, there was times in our relationship where he would have thought like, that's just silly because we hadn't taken the time to kind of understand each other's needs. And so, I just want to say too, like, nurture your relationships in such a way that they may have to weather more one day than they are right now. Um, because like I said, there's been times I have been able to see so many times, like if I had to come home with the old versions of ourselves, life would be very, very different and much darker.
Let's go back to earlier when we started talking. You had a glimpse of depression, that you've experienced it. And now we have grief in addition to your already experienced depression. Grief and depression can often intertwine and making it really hard to separate one from the other.
Yeah.
Grief is that deep ache of course, missing Edie and everything that came with having Edie and just life sometimes can lose all of its color just with grief. With depression, it is a similar shade of losing color, but definitely not the same. Do you feel like from that moment on, like, those lines have been blurred between depression and grief? Like, are you finding a hard time to differentiate them? And how are you able to navigate that?
Um, so I think having dealt with depression in the past helps, um, and really how much they need to be differentiated between is like, you know, only for the purpose of like, I just want to do what's best. I want to do what's healthy, but I don't know that I totally understand where the lines are, if there are lines or if it's, a Venn diagram with a lot of overlap or, what, but um I I have my primary doctor is a good friend. And it was about 6 months after I think I lost Edie that I told him I wanted to come off of depression medication. And he was like, I'm sorry, what? And it was like a thing of like, I had been been on it for probably, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years at that point. And I just told him, I said, I, at this point, just need to know what baseline looks for me. Like, I know it's a new normal. I know it's, um, and I did, and I have, and I am obviously very, very sad, but I am not dysfunctionally sad. And that's the difference to me. When I struggled with depression, I can remember my kids going to bed, me literally fighting the urge to go wake them up because I missed them so badly. And then the next morning, hearing them wake up and my body hurting physically because I didn't feel up to the task of being a mom. And just me just being like, how do you reconcile that? Like, I miss them so badly, I can't see straight when I'm not with them. And then when I'm with them, I don't feel capable of being with them. That was depression for me. It was very physical. It was very, I literally felt like my shoulders were tethered to my ears half the time. I mean, just the stress that lived right here, muscle spasms. I had awful migraines and I know not everyone has like the same physical manifestations, obviously, but just the overwhelm in a very physical way. I can remember I really started struggling the most probably 6 months after my second was born. And I can remember if I dropped like a baby blanket, like, he was a newborn, obviously, if I dropped something on the ground, I would feel physical pain. Like, so there were a lot of OCD elements with that. I literally felt like we were just infested. Like, a baby's blanket should not touch the ground. Like, that is disgusting. Like, you might as well burn it. Like, I mean, I just remember feeling just irrational thoughts. And then eventually to the point that I thought my family would be better off without me. And that was very, very fleeting and very short and not, luckily, anything I lived in for a long time, but I can admit that very true. And so, like I said, I think I've just really been able to see like just how, if had this happened in a different time in my life, I'd be in a much darker place. But then also just how I'm better able to ask for things, how, I think when you know your struggles, you don't have to start over every time. It's like, I know that I'm prone to darkness in this way. I know I'm prone to this in this way. Let me not set myself up for failure in that department. Let me ask for this. Let me not go here mentally. I mean, I literally I will tell myself no. Like, I will get in a line of thought and I will audibly say out loud, no, nope, like, we're not doing that. Yeah. I grew up thinking like, I mean, you would hear things like, well, you can't help the way you think, or that is not true. That is not true. And not attempting to take control of your thought life is suicide. I mean, if you're someone that's prone to the overtaking by your thoughts. And so, like I said, like, had this happened at a different point in my life, our conversation would look very, very different. But I'm thankful for those perspectives. I'm thankful. I hope I can share them. That's the other thing too. I think the more you realize there are a lot of other people on the planet, you realize that life doesn't begin and end with this thing that's happened to you. It's, it's yours. It's the hardest thing that's ever going to happen to you, hopefully. And, but it's not the only thing. I can remember during her heart surgeries, being in the surgery waiting room at Wolfson's downtown Jacksonville, looking at the interstate at tens of thousands of people driving by and just thinking, are any of those people looking up and thinking, gosh, there's a lot of weary people in that hospital? And it's like, you felt like they didn't, but I do. Every time I'm on the Fuller Warren, I look up at that hospital and I say a prayer for weary people waiting in that waiting room, not knowing, having had to surrender their child to someone that they have to admit is better able to help them than they are, And so I think, thinking, just remembering how many people out there are thinking that, but then also, because I'm naturally an empath, like not also admitting to yourself, I can't take on the rest of the world's hurt right now either. Like just knowing yourself in that way too. But I know those are conflicting, but I don't even remember the question.
No, that's okay. No, it's that self-narrative. You hit the nail right on the head there. You absolutely can change. And it is very important to change the way that you think. Sometimes you got to restart it. You have to rewire it. I have to rewire my own brain so many times on so many different things. My marriage, my parenting, my OCD, my depression, like it's a rewiring. It's a self narrative that if you continue to tell yourself that you're not good enough, you continue to tell yourself that this is unsurvivable, you're going to believe that. You're going to believe what you tell yourself.
Yeah. I heard a speaker one time say that they trained themselves to every time they were thinking, what if, to change it to what now? And I'm not great at it, but I've given it a good go. And it's like every time I find myself comparing myself to the Instagram version of someone else. I don't have Instagram. That's a lie. But every time I find myself comparing the ugliness of me to the filtered version of someone else, or, only seeing their vacation photos, not their, million other moments that were really hard to get there or whatever. From the times I've thought, what if my husband was different? And it's like, no, what now? Like, what can I do to make a step forward where I'm at right now? And that's one, like I said, those little shortcuts that have made such a difference to me, putting myself back to the perspective I know I actually want to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you seen a difference in doing that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, it's not, it was not like an overnight thing. I just progressively feel like it becomes more and more natural. But absolutely.
That's awesome. I'm going to have to try it. What now? I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Yeah. I am going to switch gears and go into a little bit of a more sensitive question. And I'm just going to read what we wrote, and it's what I wrote. And it's, I know for me, losing a parent changed my world, but I recognize that losing a child is something that shatters the very foundation of what life is supposed to be. It's not the natural order of things. I did have an abrupt loss. I did not have to watch a long suffering, and we both know my story. I was 1 year old, so I don't remember a life before her. I only know the life after her. And in addition to that, that was my parent. That's how it was supposed to be. You, as a parent, losing a child, that's not the natural order of things. I can only imagine how it must feel. I never want to relate to you in that manner. I love you so much. You carry a candle I don't want to touch. So how must it feel like living in that type of reality that shouldn't exist? Like, I'm sure it feels like it's a nightmare that you just absolutely have a hard time accepting that's real. I know it's been time, and now I believe that you understand that, Edie's physical body is not just going to walk through that door one day. You have accepted that this is life. But how have you felt that and that type of disconnection with this can't be real, and now this is my new reality?
Yeah. I think you probably feel some of the similarity too, though, and having lost your mom so young that you feel robbed of getting to know them, You know, she was 2. So it's like I knew she was wild. I knew she was spunky. I knew she was a fighter. I knew, but it's, you know, I'm getting to the ages with my boys. They're 8 and 10 now that it's like I'm starting to get preferences. I'm starting to get personalities. I'm starting to understand what makes them them. Um, we hadn't broached that really. You know, toddler is about survival. It's just like I knew what I needed to do with her to get by. I didn't know, you know, so there's just a lot of, I work with the youth in my church. So I watch these like teenage girls and I'm like, if she had been like that, I would have been okay. Or if, Lord help me if we had ever had that problem. I don't know that I would have, you know, hung, but I've gone to many a dance recital for these girls, and I'm like, you know, I see the super graceful one, and then I see the girl that it's just like she enjoys it, and that's what's important. And it's like, which one would she have been? And would I have even known the difference? You know, like would I have just seen her through rose-colored glasses like we tend to do? And she had just like ratty hair. Like it was always like sticky and stuck to her face, and she'd rub snot and rub her hair. And it's funny, I literally can just see her, like her hands probably sweaty, just pushing her hair away. And I think all the time when I see a little girl that's, you know, 5, 6 or whatever with a long ponytail, I think, would her nasty hair have ever grown? And if it had, she was on her own because I didn't know how to fix it. And, you know, so, you know, there's a lot of, but that's kind of one of those thought processes that I try to stop myself from where it's not helpful. Like, I think I'll get to a point where it's a sweet thought to think, what would she be doing right now? But right. And I might be getting there. There's times that I let myself go there, but if that thought is just crippling, you know, what could have been, what if, you know, we just talked about, I just think, what did I have? You know, I have videos. There's a lot of people that, you know, you don't have nearly as many videos of your mom as I do of my daughter in 2 years, because just technology.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I have, and it's funny because nothing's ever enough. I can't tell you how, I mean, for months after she passed, I craved new pictures. It was a weird thing. I wanted to see pictures of her I had never seen before. It's like I wanted to see her in the background of somebody else's picture at a party. Like I wanted to see what she was doing candidly that I probably wasn't present enough for in the moment, or what, I mean, just weird things like that. But just, again, just trying to shortcut myself back to, this is what we did have. This is what I've gotten to see through this all. I mean, just the world can be pretty gross. So just to get to see the remarkable things in people that I've gotten to see because of this. You know, so many people have said, I don't know what to say to you. I don't know what to say to you or whatever. And I'm like, thanks for trying anyway. Like, you know, like just watching people literally have the internal struggle of thinking what they have to say is not enough, but them doing it anyway. Like that's a really cool thing to get to witness. And I get to witness that a lot. And so, you know, I don't know that it's necessarily shaped the way I view the world differently. I think it's made me celebrate other people more. I'm kind of tired of, you know, waiting for funerals for us to tell each other like how we feel about each other, or like the things that we think are really remarkable about each other. You know, I think a lot of people have said things to me and my husband about the way they admire us that they wouldn't have if we hadn't have lost our daughter. And don't get me wrong, it's comforting. It is balm to our souls, but it's like there's a lot of struggle apart from loss. You know, like life is hard. Encourage people, say things to people, you know, let them know what they're doing well. Um, so, and like I said, like I think it makes me kind of celebrate other people's kids a little more. Like I think sometimes people almost treat me in a way that it's like they feel guilty for their children surviving,
Yeah.
and in a weird way. And
Yeah.
so just reminding people like your child is worth celebrating as much alive as mine is gone, and like just we all need to just use the time we have to just honor people in living as much as dying. And so I think that's kind of probably a way that I'm a lot less filtered too.
Yeah.
I
No, that's beautiful.
think that might be how my worldview has changed. I think I might just be a little, it's like, what can hurt me now a little?
Yeah. Yeah.
I find myself a little less filtered. I think it's very much worth mentioning. I didn't talk about it earlier about the way that grief has surprised me. Um, I think if you have not gone through deep grief, you would be extremely surprised to realize how it affects you mentally.
Yeah.
The mental fog, Casie. I mean, like I say to my husband all the time, I wouldn't know what I was looking at, but I would love to see an MRI of my brain before
Yeah.
and after losing her. I mean, it's getting better, but I I am the type of person, my husband used to call me, he's like, well, I married a detective. And he would say it in the worst way because like I notice everything. And I won't remember half of what I probably said today when we're done. My mind has been through trauma. I mean, just so that's what it is. And
That's exactly what
uh,
it is. Yeah. Yep.
it, it changes your capabilities, not just your, obviously your fatigue, your this, your that, like your capabilities. I do not feel like I have the brain power that I used to. I don't have the bandwidth. And so like that's like a very practical like rehabilitation type thing that I didn't anticipate needing to do, but like I will probably have to introduce like Sudoku into my life earlier than I expected or what. I mean, I literally do not recall things that I would have ordinarily um like by a long shot. And so I will, but I've humbled myself to literally ask people, listen, I know we had a conversation and you told me this, like would you please remind me, like because I care. It's not the care that has gone away,
Yeah.
it's the ability. And so it's like it's humbling to have to tell someone, okay, you told me a very sad thing happening in your life and I'm now having to have you repeat it, but I care enough to have you repeat it. So saying like, you told me about your cousin's illness, will you please remind me exactly what you said? I mean, like, just having to humble myself in that way, because that is so real. That is one thing I wish I could scream on the mountains. Like, I'm not as rude as I seem. Like, I am just not as capable as I was. And that's just a hard, hard truth that I've had to come to terms with.
Wow. So that was definitely incredible. You would attest, not only does it change your view on the world, it changes your physical capabilities as a
Absolutely.
person.
Absolutely. I literally, I was the type of person that it was like, my husband would get so mad because he would be like, I didn't say that. And I'm like, yes, you did. And your hair looked really funny when you said it. I mean, like I remembered the details, it's
Yeah.
like you were facing that way because the sun was hitting this side of your face. And he's like, okay, psycho, I give up. Like, like I was detail oriented. And now it's like to not even be able to remember the gist of a conversation I had, much less having it. It's a little scary. It feels like, like now anyone seeing this is like, oh, second guess you ever like watching my child or something. And it's not
No,
that. I mean, it's not like, it's not
it's like an
necessarily.
energy loss. It's almost like you've lost a spunk. It's almost like you've lost a spark. It's
I've
just,
lost a will. I can tell you
yeah,
that, I mean, it's like, but there's a physical heaviness to it. I mean, it's literally, they call it a brain fog because that's what it feels like. It feels like your head is in a cloud, and it feels hazy, and it feels humbling for sure. But it is very, very real. And I think that's a part of grief that people don't anticipate or even talk about, really. Like, I had never heard that. And so, like, it's literally something, like, an advice I give to people that are not, like, write more down than you think. Like, that's my advice. Like, to someone that's losing someone, write more down than you think. Because I will be, I will have a conversation, and I'll literally in that moment think, okay, well, there's no way I'd forget this because such and such and such and such, da, 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 da. And I mean, it's not a day later, and it's just, that was not me before. And so it's just so hard to believe every time that it's going to happen, and every time it does. And, it's weird what stays very, very imprinted and what doesn't, but it's just not worth not showing yourself the grace of writing it down, asking, just ask for forgiveness if you feel the need to, but ask, and, just realize that you will be working with a new normal, like, in that way. And anyway.
Well, do you mind if I ask you, how is your husband? How is that? Like, are you two exhibiting two different grief styles? I would imagine you're two totally different people, but, would you mind going into that maybe there is two different grief styles that you're seeing, or how do
Yeah,
you two even navigate it together?
absolutely. So by the grace of God, we are very different. That used to feel like a curse, but in this process, it has felt like such a blessing. I mean, just my husband's ability to compartmentalize where I don't have that, like, it has been survival for us. Like, him just being able to make decisions early on, or knowing his own mind more than me about certain things that you can't get around, like, early on. Um, you know, my husband knew right away, for whatever reason, that he wanted her cremated because he said, I'm not going to be able to look at a tiny casket. I don't know to this day. I mean, if I had felt, I think if I had felt very different, he would have respected that. But I don't know how I felt about that. And maybe it preserved me from an image that I wouldn't be able to get out of my head, and he said, I just want to scatter her ashes in her yard where she played, or whatever. And so it's like that in that moment was important to him. Whereas I'm usually more opinionated, then yes, we will yield to something that's important to you. But I was just thankful. It was really, really important to me to donate her organs if we were able. That's always been important to me for me. And I just think, our personal belief is that a carcass is a carcass when it's a carcass, or whatever. So I didn't believe that her body held value apart from, not to me anymore, apart from what it could potentially do for other people. And I didn't want to hold on to that. And so, but something you don't think about when you're just like, okay, I'm checking a box. I'm confident this is what I want. That process is an interview that you get a phone call hours after your loved one died because they need to know the condition of their organs. So that is not a call I could have taken, whereas my husband sat on that call for me, and so it's like, whereas I probably at some point in our marriage would have resented the fact that he's so much less sensitive than I am, we've just been able to see time and time again how much it has served us at this time. We're in a grief share class right now, which probably seems about 2 years too late. But it was never anything we were opposed to. It was just nothing we got around to, kind of thing. We kind of went back probably too soon into just serving in the normal capacities that we were. But just because of the way people had surrounded us and loved us, it kind of felt just a very natural thing to do. But anyway, so we're in a grief share class right now, and there is this page that you open to that's 2 pages full of like grief symptoms, so to speak, and it's probably 200 check boxes or whatever. I think there's maybe 5 or 6 that I did not check of having experienced, and his has maybe 5 or 6 checked. And it felt like such a like yin and yang moment. Like, thank you for the way that we complement each other, because it's just like, whereas that could look like, and there's been times where it's like I'm envious of how he can compartmentalize. He has told me he's entirely envious of how I wish I could be as sad as you. He's like, it hurts to not be able to be that sad. And granted, not to say that we've both done it perfectly. Like, I think, the conversation has had to be had, like, are you not sad because there are these things that need to be done? Or are you not sad because you're drowning out with things that aren't important to you? I mean, and I think that that's not healthy, but no, he's doing well. It's a weird question. You never know how to answer that. You're like, I think I'm doing great at this, like, or whatever. And I think, but more than anything, we are doing very well in that there's nothing that's off limits for us to talk about and to do together. There's nothing I feel like I couldn't ask him, like literally sometimes I will say, like, I think they call it like body doubling or whatever. Like, I can't go to the grocery store alone today. Like, I feel so like, I know it needs to be done. We need to eat this week. Like, we should probably feed our children at least once a day. I cannot go to the grocery store, and he will just ride with me if we have it in our schedule for that to do. Whereas, like, he could easily look at that and be like, get over it, be an adult. But that's just not where we're at. Like, I'm so thankful that we are just sensitive to just the things that we need to be sensitive to with each other. And so no, he's doing great. He is a rock. He is, he has, but the same for brain fog though. Like, even as much as he seems, I don't mean seems, that's not a good way to express it, but the way that he is able to compartmentalize and just be like, I mean, he's told me, he's like, Lauren, I just don't think about it. Like, he's like, I let myself think about it when I let myself think about it, and I don't when I don't. And it's like, oh, good for you, man. That's not an option. And it is, and it isn't. I mean, there's times, but I think mine has a lot more, like, mine does not have airtight seals like his
There's
does.
so much more to it though, Lauren. Like, there's so much more though to it. And I don't want you to not credit yourself, and I don't want it to see, like, you were Edie's mom. Like, moms and dads, I believe, are genetically dispositioned to have different dynamics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
you carried her, you birthed her, you grew her, all the things. And it is okay. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. No, but anyway, I mean, he definitely, like I said, just that ability to kind of compartmentalize. I think some people think it's like it's not reality, and it is. It's like I said, I didn't work when we lost her. Like, his work was extremely generous in just like, we don't want to see you back for a little bit, but that had to end. And so, for him to just be able to continue, and I can't imagine that extra burden of, feeling like I want to feel appropriately sad, but there's the level of provision for our family was different for him. I mean, that dynamic was different in that he was the breadwinner, and he was, so the pressure to keep it on the rails more than I had, and he's a railroader. That was fun. Anyway, but yeah, so just, I'm thankful that I have totally been able to celebrate our differences through this. like, and not resent them even a little
Yeah.
bit. And like I said, like different stage of our marriage, different conversation probably, um, but the game changer of just being like able to absolutely communicate it all. Like me saying to him, like, I need you to put your phone down and hold me for a minute. And him not take that, 10 years ago may have been like, well, what do you mean? Like it wasn't a cost of his character. It's not like, that's what I need from you right now. And then, him just being like, okay, absolutely. Thank you for letting me know exactly what you need. And,
Yeah.
so no, I mean, and then just him, I said like my will is what I notice has just waned, like, and my ability to experience joy is very much not natural yet. I'm hopeful, but it's not. So like, just I feel like we step it up at different times or whatever. I mean, sometimes grief looks like sadness, but sometimes it just looks like edginess. And so
Yeah.
knowing when they're edgy, it's like, hey boys, come play catch with me or whatever. Or the boys and I do something different or whatever. Um, and so for me, holidays, so weird because I'm not like a big milestone person. I'm not the type of person that looks at the calendar waiting for a date to roll around, like that I'm going to, memorialize on that date. I'm not a date person, but the muscle memory of grief is very real. And so like just feeling, you know, at Christmas, instead of feeling present with my voice for what this Christmas is, I feel what that first Christmas was, 3 weeks after she passed. And so, just things like that. And it's or just whether you're thinking of a previous Christmas or it's just hard to will yourself to be happy still. And so just being able to kind of lift each other up in those moments when it's like he knows that I want Christmas to be special and then I'm having trouble making that happen. And so he is, he helps, we usually do this on Christmas. Let's do this, I mean, just like keeping those things, um, just kind of stepping up to help make things feel special, stuff like that. So,
Yeah. That really plays on y'all's relationship because like you touched on for just a second there, a different time, a different marriage, a different reaction. There's so many
absolutely.
people that go through shared child loss and there is contempt. There is like resentment
And it's easy to
because,
understand how, yeah,
yeah. And it could be because one is more compartmentalized than the other. And so it seems like they just don't care as much
right.
as I do. And that's not the case.
Yeah,
So I think that was beautiful that you shared that with us because that's so true. It's a maturity of a relationship. It takes this long to be able to really understand your partner. Uh,
absolutely.
and this level of a loss to your family, it's so important. You shared just a second ago about grief share, that the two of you are going through grief share. And I think that's
Mhm.
beautiful. It doesn't matter how long it's been. What do
Yeah.
you think of grief share? How has that been? Would you mind expanding on what it's like?
It has been good. I liked, it having been this long. So it's been over 2 years since we lost Edie. So it has been great. It's been great material. Um, it's one of those things that you start to feel like it's like you're not a grief graduate, but you do feel like you're a little bit more experienced or whatever. So I feel like you almost feel like, and this has only ever been self-prescribed. This is never anyone else has ever made this feel, but you get to a point where you're like, you feel like you're losing your grief is supposed to expire. Like you're not allowed to still, it's like, okay, a lot of things have happened since, like to a lot of people, like get over it. No one has made me feel that way other than me. But there is this feeling of, you're like, but no, I'm not over it. And so being in grief share and seeing that there are other people too, that it's like Some of them, it's like, this is their third time being here because they lost their mom 6 years ago or whatever, so it's just like, that was definitely like, it's cool to see, like I said, you don't compare grief, but then also just to see that, just to see very tangibly that grief does not work on a timeline.
Mhm.
For me too, I mean, just like I said, literally that stupid page with the 200 check marks, it felt so good to do, Casie. Like, it was like, okay, like that wasn't just me. That is a symptom of grief.
Mhm.
And like, and to see them described so differently too, because you think like there's fatigue, and it's like, it's not. There's fatigue, there's loss of will, there's this, there's this, there's this. It's like you felt these very, very dynamic emotions, but you felt so unable to express them, or you didn't feel like anyone wanted to hear you express them. And that's the sole purpose of this. And so, but then to just really kind of start getting into dissecting what you're actually feeling versus what you're not. And, like I said, like my husband only felt 5 of those things or whatever. So it's like, let's really pay attention to the 5 he was feeling, and like, let me be sensitive to those. And, and then just in hope too, that like things that you're sharing, I think I said in one of the first sessions, I said something about the fact that basically, like, because we were talking, the question was like, has someone said something inappropriate or hurtful? And then to hear, I honestly haven't had that. There's been a couple of things that hurt, but not a
Like
lot.
what? Like what? Like what hurts?
So, like, I mean, like for instance, the lady that's leading group share, her story is fairly similar to mine, but she's in her 80s. So this happened to her, something like 50 years ago or whatever. So she lost her, young daughter, and but her daughter was adopted, and someone said to her, at least she was only adopted, or
Mm.
something to that effect, or at least you have other children. And I honestly have not had those. I've had, it's funny, there are a lot more turns of phrases about death than you realize until after you lose someone. I can remember I was the one that hurt me. Like, I said the thing. I can remember being with a couple of girlfriends not long after she passed. We had taken our boys for a bike ride, and we were just resting. And I said something. We were talking about how one of the girls was gifted in this way and the other one. And I was like, man, I would just like to be good at something, just one thing, because they both had these like multiple things that they were doing or whatever. And then one of my girlfriends said, whatever, you're gifted in your thoughtfulness. She said, from the moment I knew you, you have offered to like keep my kids for me to do something more than anyone I think I've ever known. And I said out loud, oh, that's me. Like, I can keep your kids alive, I guess. And then, like, just having said that out loud, I was like, well, maybe not, like, it just these little, like I said, landmines. It's just like things that are lying in wait that you don't, like, that conversation seemed so innocent. And I just stepped right into it with no foresight that it could possibly be coming. And, but, I shared with the group because they were just all talking about these things that people had said. And, I had a lady one time say to me, she was talking about like talking to her daughter about like tampons and things or whatever. And she was like, well, you're lucky. You don't have to have you don't have to have the girl conversations. And, and like, no ill will was meant, but it just in that moment just cuts. But it's like, also in that moment, I don't want her to think another thing about it. She did not mean that. And so I said something to the group of something about like, where you are able, give the benefit of the doubt, like just show mercy, because that person could have said nothing. And that to me has been people that I've seen people avoid eye contact with me. Like, I'm not, like, I know they have. I've seen people avoid me because they don't know what to say. And it's like, yes, maybe they're not the most delicate, but they tried something. They sacrificed some piece of themselves to say something. And anyway, so I shared that in like the first, and then like by week 2, a mom who had very recently, like 2 weeks or something crazy, very, very recently lost her adult son, told me, like, I'm so thankful you said that. It was in the back of my mind, and somebody said something to me this week that had you not just said that, I would have been so angry. And so just being around people who are walking similar things or maybe a half step ahead of you, it's definitely a good process, and it's therapeutic. And I would still like to do individual therapy. I haven't, and not because I'm opposed to, but it's just like sometimes, especially early on for me, adding appointments, no matter
Yeah.
what they were more trouble than they were worth. It was like
Mhm.
the stress of getting places and scheduling and things like that it was just not worth what it then added to my life. And especially when, like, if I had not had at home what I had at home, that would be different probably.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, but I do feel a need now. I would like to do individual therapy. In that, another thing about grief is it tends to just make every bad thing that's ever happened to you snowball, you
Yeah.
know? So it's like, I would like to start to unlink a lot of those things, like deal with them individually for what they are, instead of, feeling like it's this, snowball
Yeah.
of things that I either want to approach or don't, and so it's like, let's process them for what they actually are, and, detangle them.
Yeah. Like you don't want it to be a new normal that now everything snowballs. Like
Yeah.
you want to be able to navigate the new Lauren, like
Yeah. And it's like the
the
next
new,
hard thing that happens, I don't want to link it to my daughter's death.
yeah,
It's like, I just want to, do healthy with that thing too, process that thing the way it should be. And, know that I've dealt with these other things in the past too.
yeah. With grief support, do you feel like, and I'm going to try to like word this sensitively. Do you feel like I'm so glad that you're doing it now. Do you feel like it would have helped more had you done it earlier? And second point to the question, do you feel like this is something that you're going to continue to do? The reason that I'm asking is because I also go to grief support. Now, I've, I'm 37 years into this, and it gets to a point where I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Absolutely.
So do you feel like this is still a good time? Like it's really helping you to get it out, to talk about it, to like be surrounded by people who have this precious thing in common with you?
It is. I don't regret not having done it sooner, to be honest. And I'll preface that with, again, I had really, really great support at home. I think if I hadn't, I would have needed something. And I think feeling isolated is never a good idea. I think all the lies become louder and louder when you are isolated.
Yeah.
But so probably 6 months after she passed, I joined like a year-long ladies' Bible study. Naturally, you can imagine I did not want to do that. The last thing I wanted to do was go one day a week and talk to a group of ladies. It felt like, I didn't know one of them, but I had them judged in my mind. I don't want to go have trivial lady conversations. The group saved my life. It was these women that were just warriors to me. Like, they would have gone to battle for me, like in the way that they prayed for me and were sensitive on certain dates, or not, just sensitive to, this is what I feel like I need to say to you right now.
Mhm.
Um, and that group will always be so precious to me. Another girl in the group had experienced like a very similar loss. I was only 6 months removed. She was closer than I was. And so just for us to be able to kind of love on each other in that way too, just being right there in the thick of really just the stunned phase still, but then, other ladies being farther along in similar things, and then other ladies not having experienced anything similar, but just absolutely inexplicably loving us. And so just that but that doesn't mean that I didn't need a nap every single week after that group, because I left with my face looking like a punching bag and just from sobbing. But just how beautiful that was to just genuinely, I had these relationships that were built and established on the premise of nothing more than us wanting what was best for each other. It was like, because, like your regular relationships don't necessarily have that. They have the baggage of your busyness. They have the baggage of things just know about each other in the past or whatever else, or just personality quirks that get on each other's nerves or whatever. That was exempt from this group. We got there and we took care of business. Like, we talked about what was really going on with us. Like, there wasn't time for trivial, because all we did was talk about real things. And so I say that to say grief share probably would have been more helpful had I not been a part of that group as well. But no, I don't regret not starting it until now. But like I said, I had other things in place, what felt like very, very divinely appointed things. But namely, my marriage being in the shape it was the biggest of things. And then, yeah, so again, no, but I also would say that it's never a bad idea. Like, I don't think that that's ever a bad idea. Again, if you're going and the appointment of getting there is harder and more overwhelming than any of the progress you're making in that.
Yeah.
And I hesitate to say that because sometimes I don't know that we can truly gauge that. Like, I think because our body wants to be at rest so much, or because we don't want to get out of bed so much, we may not be honest with ourselves about that. But if you truly feel like, like I said early on, like the burden of the appointments and the going was more than I could handle, which I genuinely felt like it was, then I would say wait. But don't wait if you're not talking to anyone. I don't think that that's a good thing. I don't think that we're made to shoulder everything by ourselves, and certainly not at that time. But
Yeah, suffer in silence. I don't believe we're made to suffer in silence. Mm-mm. How did you get linked up with the grief share? Like, is that something that your church does, or was that a case worker brought you something? Okay.
So my church hosts a segment of it, but it's not affiliated to my church, if that makes sense. Grief share is, I think, international, at least national, but yes. So my church just happens to host, and honestly, actually, one of the ladies that was in that group that was so dear to me, she and her husband are the ones that facilitate it for our little area. So no, I think it's like one of those things you could just go to Grief Share's website and just find out which churches or civic centers or whatever are hosting it. But yeah, so I probably wouldn't have necessarily gone to that without her prompting, the lady that facilitates it. But yes, I'm very, very glad.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So what do you guys do while you're there? Is there is everything kind of you expect to do the same thing, or is there something different every time there's a different theme? Like, what does Grief Share look like?
So it's a video curriculum, and it's a set number of weeks, because there are different themes that you navigate each week, or that you dive into each week. Like, 1 week is, I don't even remember what the early weeks were, but I think I don't remember if it was the whole week or just kind of a subsection of the week, but literally talked about, I call them landmines, but Grief Share calls them, I don't remember. They have a good little phrase for it. It was like grief surprises or something. It's not. It wasn't. But it's something to that effect. But it felt so affirming. Like in that moment, you just felt like, okay, I've called these things landmines, and that's felt dramatic, but it's like you felt very, very seen in that moment, that it's like, okay, like this is a very real thing, and other people have that. But and then other weeks will be, anger or bitterness. One week is self-care, like literally just kind of starting to get to know the things that actually help you. And, literally like now's not the time to neglect your own health. Like, chiropractor visits, massage, I mean, like, things like that, in addition to just, things that may need to be supplemental for a while, but your baseline health is definitely not the time to let that go. And so, there's subsections, and then the material that they've done, it's mostly interviews of people, and then like the person that's being interviewed, it'll say like what their loss is at the bottom and things as they're speaking. And so it's pretty much just, it's curriculum that they've assembled pretty much solely on the interviews of people that have walked through it, and some people that have made careers then of counseling outside of it and things like that. So
wow. So it is a class segment type thing. So there are more than your husband and yourself in these classes.
Right. And so then obviously you just naturally share, based on what your experience is with what the theme of the video was. As with anything, sometimes that's more rewarding than others. And sometimes you're like, you'll hear something and you're like, oh, I don't know if that was relevant. But you can chalk that up to grief fog too. But no, but it's still just, I think it's just always helpful to just hear other people. And it may be the only place that they feel heard. And so you may be just, you may be a help to someone else that you don't even know about. And so, no, it's a really good sense of community, I feel like.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I want to go into, really, we've talked about some of the best ways and some of the maybe areas of improvement that people can work on supporting those going through grief. You mentioned that you didn't have to cook for 2 months. And so that was a beautiful way to support anybody going through grief. Can you maybe talk about that, and then some more just great ways that you would, if putting it into an aspect, if you were taking care of yourself, what would you outside of your body be doing for you yourself going through that? Maybe the first full year. I know we're a couple of years in now, but it's still relevant. You still need the love, you still need the support. So first year up into even now, what does that look like?
Absolutely. So, it's initially, like I said, we did not cook for 2 months. We had meals every other day for 2 months, and plenty of leftovers in between. And I called it the grief train. Like we live, we live in my grandparents' home. So like, I didn't make it very far in life, Casie. I'm exactly where I started, where you met me. But so obviously we live in the same city we grew up in. We have a ton of family, but we are also very Southern. And so I say the grief train just goes in motion. Like, there are just women that know exactly what to do. And literally 2 of Josh's aunts came over, maybe, I guess the same day, and just came. I don't know if someone else brought it or if one of them bought it, but like came with like this massive box of new Tupperware. Mm-hmm. And then one of them came and realized like Josh had what I used to call the squatty coffee potty. He is the only one that drinks coffee. So he had like a little like 2-cup coffee pot. And she came into my house and realized like that's just not going to do with all the people that's going to be coming in and out and everything. And so she came with a new coffee pot the next day. And Josh's cousin, who is like one of his best friends, she came into our house, and she was the one that had organized the meals. And she looked like, she was like, I just have to say, like, people love y'all. Like, and she said it in such a way that she was exhausted because of like the number of calls and stuff that she was getting and having to field for us. And so just don't underestimate for a moment how valuable things like that are to people, because I couldn't have done it if someone had texted me about bringing me food. Granted, and I say this with all sincerity, I cannot be more thankful for those meals. But if I had to organize them,
Yeah.
I would have just said it's not worth it, please.
Yeah.
Like, and so
Can't handle
for,
the mental load. Can't even handle the
yeah,
mental
and so
load for you to be able to help me. I can't take on the mental
no,
load of facilitating it. Like,
not to mention, so literally his two aunts basically lived here, and every time someone brought food, they packed it up in a way that my kitchen was going to stay clean. I mean, just these things that just no, like, so many people don't think about that are just the most humble forms of servant that, and it just, they left this like giant cooler of canned drinks on ice, like just kept it stocked for like a week as people are just coming in and out and seeing us. And like I said, and then if just like, kind of knowing that we probably wouldn't want to waste this food, but like I'm not processing it right now. And so like getting rid of the older food as the new food comes in. I mean, just all of that, like that may seem like a small thing. It was no small thing to me.
huge.
Like
Yeah.
no small thing to me. And then thereafter, people had, people had collected money. And you want to know one of the things that we used money for the next month? Like, I hadn't cooked in 2 months. We used it for HelloFresh, which was not sustainable for us to always do, but it was like, I need help starting to cook again. Like, I don't even remember what it's like. And so, and my kids loved it. Like the big graphics that they send, they helped me with and it was just such a sweet little memory of us cooking those meals together and like just starting to do that again. Um, and then, people had already collected money for us, which was just immensely kind. We were able just like once or twice to just sneak away for a few days and just be in a different set of walls.
Yeah.
Just literally just spend absolute uninhibited time with our children. And but also then we were in the middle of starting our kids compete in our church's sports league, and we were getting ready to start a new season, and we always coach typically. And so we were getting ready to start flag football. Like I said, she had been at flag football practice with us the night before. And so many people at the sport, like, so the guy that runs our sports ministry came to me and he's like, Lauren, he's like, I know what you're probably going to say. He's like, I just have to ask because so many people have asked to do something. He's like, can we do something to raise money? And I said, we can do it under one condition. I said, this is where we've invested our time. This is where we want our boys competing. This is where, we had planned on all of our children coming up and competing because this is the culture we want our kids to learn to compete in. We are outgrowing our facilities. I said, we didn't have lights. We didn't have lights to light the fields, so we couldn't practice at nights or play at nights, which based on the numbers was not sustainable for us to not turn kids away if we weren't able to practice at night. I said, if you want to do something in my daughter's name, I said, we're going to light these fields. And, just again, everyone asking and him facilitating that conversation. I didn't know how to start something that would be deemed a legacy, but they gave me that gift. And, we got quotes for these lights to light these fields. It was like $100,000. And so I was like, okay, it'll be maybe a 4 or 5 year project. And so they planned Edie Day, as they call it. And every season we have an Edie Day where we do vendors. Like my mom has turned into like a baker. Like she literally would bake for weeks and make so many baked goods. And then there's like this little girl she's not little girl now. She's 12 years old. Like that's so dear to me that was like, I'll make rubber band bracelets. And it's like, she could have easily said like, I'm a kid, I can't do anything, but she made like 600 rubber band bracelets or whatever. And she would literally like look a grown person in the face and give them the eyes. So she would get the biggest donations of anybody. And that first Edie day, I think we raised something like, I think it was over $20,000 on the first day. I don't even
Wow.
know.
Yeah.
It may have been more than that. I don't know. I hate that I don't know that number, but we lit those fields in less than a year. In less than a year, we had lights on those fields. And it's like, that's not anything I could have thought of. That's not, and so I just tell people like, don't think that what you have to offer is too small because the person grieving can't do any of it. Like they can't do any of it on their own, not in those early days. Or, I would have struggled to ever ask anyone for that on my own. Even if I had the vision for it, even if I had the idea for it, like my personality is such, I just would have struggled to ask people for it. And so it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. Like we've just, anyway, so no thing is too small. That's what I say.
Oh my God, that is absolutely beautiful. That's so cool. And that's a forever thing.
The
Like
forever thing.
that's, oh my goodness. Edie
So
lights up the whole
babies, so
field.
many babies get to play under those lights.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
incredible. And that's more of a, that's so beautiful. I don't even
Mhm.
know. I like it's a, just want to take a moment to just
Yeah.
appreciate that because that's incredible.
Yeah.
It's suffering ceases to be suffering the moment that it finds a purpose.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's beautiful. And the boys will think about it. How are the boys doing? I mean, you mentioned earlier how they were.
They're grinning at me. They're drawing in the next room and they just grinned at me. They're they're coming in for their cameo. Hey,
Hi,
this is
how are
Elliot.
you?
And
Hello.
this is Henry. Hi.
Hi, Elliot. Hi,
Hair's
Henry.
never brushed.
You guys are incredible.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you guys. Um, so they're doing really well. They again, like gauging how any of us is doing is always tricky. They
Yeah.
seem to me like incredibly adjusted boys. They are kind. They are they are very good boys, whether or not um, whether or not they are processing or have dealt with. That is very, very hard to gauge. Someone gave us a throw pillow. And again, this is not someone that's like entirely close to me. It was just something she saw and she's like, I have to order this for this, for this family. It was another family in our church. Um, and I was able to tell her this because it was just such a precious moment for me. But it's a little throw pillow of Edie. It's a picture of her that she had turned into a throw pillow. And when she gave it to me, I told her, I said, I know exactly how this is going to play out. Like my younger son is going to claim it. It's his. It's done. And he did. But then every once in a while, I'd go like tuck him in at night, and he'd give it to me to like take back to bed with me, kind of thing. He's just very, very sweet and very silently serving. Like he's just that type. Like it's like he just knows when he needs to come sit next to you or like that kind of thing. He's not talkative. He's not expressive. He's just very quietly gentle. But anyway, one night they share a room. I told you, like when I first came home and told them that she had passed, I told them like, your bodies are still going to just want to play and do, and I don't expect that you guys are just going to sit around and be sad. And then it didn't happen, and I'm just like, why are you guys not sad? But I did struggle with not like my younger son did say some things, and he's actually my non-express or just not as expressive, but like he was 5, so just had very, very young ways of trying to sort out what had happened. Like I can't remember where my older son was, but Josh and I were in the car with Henry coming home from somewhere, and Henry got teary-eyed and he said, and we were, Bud, what's the matter? And he said, I wish Elliot and I were twins because it means we would die at the same time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's so
Um,
devastating.
yeah. And so like in his little mind, like he had worked that
Yeah.
out that he and Elliot were going to die at different times and he didn't like that. Um,
Hmm.
and so then you get yourself together enough to have those conversations and you do, but I had not had any of those conversations with my older son. And he's a lot like his dad, like very, very compartmentalized, very black and white. But he's a lot like me too. Like he's a communicator. And so it was hard for me to see that like he would know how to communicate and he's not. And um, so I didn't ever want to like force sadness upon him though. And
Yeah.
so, it's just one of those hard things. Like you don't want to just probe and probe and probe and not take nothing for an answer when they say that they're not thinking of anything, but it just like you just think you have to be feeling something. And so one night at bedtime that I think Henry had given Elliot the Edie pillow to sleep with. And I went to tuck them in, and they had been laying there for a while already. And Elliot says to me, I'm just really sad and I don't know why.
Hmm.
And I said, Bud, I said, do you think it's because you have the Edie pillow? And he said, yeah, I think so. And he just starts to cry. And I said, Bud, I mean, this was a year and a half, a year after. I mean, I don't know. It was a long time. And this was the second time I had seen him cry since she passed. The day I told him, and then this time, I mean, about this. And I said, so he just started sobbing and I hold him. Henry gets out of his bed and I mean, I think it felt really good for him. Like I've been
Yeah.
sad this whole time and I've not understood why no one else is. Um, and I said, Elliot, I said, something really, really bad happened to us. And I don't think you've ever really cried about it, bud. I was like, that is okay. And so, hasn't happened again, but it just like that little pillow gave me a moment I needed so badly because it was so weird to me how little he felt, and it's so I was able to tell her that. And like I said, so just no thing too small. But yeah, I think that they're doing well. Nothing's off limits to talk about. They know that. Um, Henry definitely imagines a lot more where she would fit into what we're doing. Um, Elliot, it's like he just doesn't see the need to do that. He's like his daddy, like she's not here and that's sad, but I
It's
don't need
okay.
to
Yeah.
necessarily imagine, and or whatever. So, um, anyway, but um, he's the one that I felt the need to express more to when I was sad, because I think he kind of like his dad, it's almost like I don't want to acknowledge her sadness because she doesn't want to be feeling it. So I don't want to make it worse, kind of thing, or whatever. So like I kind of just needed him to know, like, no, sadness just happens, bud. Like we need to, like, it's not, we don't have to look away from it. Like sadness happens. And so I am definitely, whereas he's not particularly sensitive, I am kind of his soft spot. And so I think it almost made him mad to see me sad. And so it was like, if we don't talk about Edie or if we don't imagine things, then she won't be sad. And so I think we've definitely gotten past a lot of that. And he just kind of understands, like, no, like mom really likes talking about Edie. And, at one point it occurred to me, I was like, Josh, I look at pictures and videos so often, like they don't have that. And so I told them, anytime y'all want to see pictures or videos, please ask me this or that or whatever. But my husband put the picture slide from her memorial on YouTube for them. And so they can just go watch that if they ever want to. And somehow they watch Dude Perfect more than that. But anyway, we can't judge it all. So
How was the memorial?
it was beautiful. It was, again, like we felt very, very held. We felt very lifted up in that we couldn't have, so many people played different parts that we couldn't have played at that time. I have a cousin that is a good bit younger than me. So he's almost like a nephew cousin kind of, or whatever. So he's 10 years younger than me, and we've always been very close. And he loves, loves, loves my kids. And he is, he was a production major, or whatever. So he did all of the media, he, like what 25, 20, probably 20-year-old guy at that time is comfortable reaching out to my family and Josh's family and this and that to coordinate all of that. And he just did. I don't know how it all happened, and he did it all, and, just to the guy, he's family to us, but our, pastor that officiated and, did the service and everything, and just, how special he wanted it to be. And we asked family to sing, a song that I sang to her at bedtime. And, so one of the videos, like he did such a remarkable job, but the videos of like, they're typically just a slideshow, but like, because he was so gifted, like he incorporated videos of her too. So that felt like such a gift of people getting to see her personality that maybe didn't necessarily meet her. But there's one video. My mom has like a cheerleader personality type. And so she just had such a different relationship with Edie, in that she was just bubbly and fun with her, and I'm not bubbly and fun. And so there's this video of them singing This Little Light of Mine, and my bossy little daughter is basically like shutting up my mom half the time and telling her when to start and when to stop and this and that. But it's just the sweetest video. And that's what we ended up actually when we lit the parks. It was Edie, This Little Light of Mine Day. And anyway, but again, just so many people, and I probably don't even know the half of what people did. That's what's so kind about the way people's giving is just that they certainly didn't get thank you cards from me, because that's probably the biggest shortcoming of my life. But that's not why they did it. And I know that that's the case. And, just a million different ways because there's such a pressure with a memorial, right? To feel like and I think I said that at her service. I don't honestly remember, but like, it feels like there's this pressure that this is your last opportunity to honor someone. It's not the case, but there is a pressure that's there or whatever. So, but then you're at your least capable time of life to do it. And so just the way people stepped in and just did so many different things was just remarkable.
Oh my goodness. Well, how about now? How are you doing now, years later? Do you find yourself still having days where they're hard days? It's hard to get out of bed. And if there are hard days, how do you do that?
Absolutely. I mean, I told you, I always describe them as landmines. The landmines get farther and farther apart. I don't step into as many things unforeseen. I'm better at mentally preparing myself for the things that hurt. And then there's things that just hurt less. That's some of the progress as you get farther away. There is a weird element of the farther away you get, the more you feel like you don't want it to get farther away. Like, I want it to still hurt because she was mine and I was hers, and this is my hurt to have, and but that's not realistic. That's not the best, you know. Um, I've met great people, like I said, that are like a half a chapter ahead of me or a full chapter ahead of me. You know, I have a newer girlfriend that, you know, like her daughter passed away at college. She's close to 10 years now or whatever. And, you know, for her to tell me, you know, for me to just be like, I don't know that I'm getting better. And her to be like, year two is a lot harder than year one. That's why. And like, that would have never, that doesn't make sense to me. So that would not have occurred to me. You know, to me, the rawness and the freshness should have always been the worst part. And it's not. The worst part is thinking that you're forgetting, and the worst part is thinking that you're not justified and still feeling this way. And a lot of those things hurt a lot worse than the shock and the numbness. So yeah. So just, I think I'm doing well. Again, that's always a hard question to answer. How are any of us doing? But I feel like our home is healthy. I feel like we talk about what we need to talk about. I feel like, again, I just think that different people and different situations have been placed in my life when I needed them, and I took them. You know, I mean, that's part of that is you have the gift of these people, but if you don't choose to open up to them, or you don't choose to have the conversation, if you don't choose to have this conversation, you know, like there's not, you know, I think I told you, like, to me, the beauty that can come out of grief is its usability, is its ability to speak to another person that's going to need it. And so I think we're already doing that. And then I think I'm also able to show myself the grace of, nope, I'm not ready to do that just yet, you know. And so it's a balance, but I think I'm doing well. Um, I I struggle probably more in numbness now, than hurt. Um, I it feel like, again, like I said, it feels like you're kind of expected to assimilate back into the busyness now, like you have less free passes or something. So, or maybe you just do that to yourself. And so busyness hurts for me. If I don't have some stillness programmed into my schedule to sit back, and it's like, I mean, if I haven't heard my daughter's voice in 4 or 5 days, it'll take my breath away. You know, it's like, I just need to hear something, you know. Again, I mean, what a gift that I have that. How many people lost children before that was an option? Um, but I think I'm doing well. Um, you know, like I said, I'm working outside of the home a couple of days a week. I think that's re-engaged my mind a little bit. I don't find, it's not like a career that I find identity in. That's not its purpose. It's like a means to an end. Like, you know, life's gotten expensive. We kind of needed me to do something. We had the luxury of Josh being home a couple days a week, and so I could do this. But I do think it's a small blessing in that it has, you know, I'm using my mind in a different way.
It's a distraction.
To lift that fog too. I mean, like I said, it's a very real thing that my mind did not work the same way, with the same efficiency at the same level. And so, yeah, getting to kind of, like, who knows, like, I may be, you know, like, prolonging dementia by being back at work, you know, I don't know. But I mean, I do feel like I'm, you know, using my mind again in a different way. But I think we're doing well.
That's good. I'm happy to hear that. I'm really happy to
Mhm.
hear that. Got a quote
Yeah.
here that says, I think it's so powerful to reflect on how far we've come, even in the darkest of places. We may not be where we want to be, but we are no longer where we started. Do you
Absolutely.
do you feel like, well, it's so it's never going to get easier. You're only going to be able to carry it different. That's what I've heard. Like
Yeah.
it will never, because she will always be gone. It's not like it will end up fixing itself. 20 years from now, when one of the boys is getting married, you're going to have that same wish that you were doing this with Edie, as the
Absolutely.
bride's mother instead of the groom's mother.
Absolutely. And, um, it just, there are so many things that could be dwelled on. I mean, people say like daughters care for their moms and sons, cling to their wives' families. And it's like, are my kids gonna, and it's just like, all I can do instead of what if, what now? Like I can be an irreplaceable force in my boy's life. I can love them so well that they can't imagine, even after they're married, marrying someone that's not okay to be a part of our family, because of how much love and security they feel at home. Um, so no, there will always be an element of what could have been, would she have still had nasty, snotty, matted hair on her wedding day? I don't know, um, and that was what was funny is, we thought like basically as ignorant as we were to the fact that we were dealing with a child whose heart was malformed, we thought, we might have to have the conversation when it comes to childbearing years. Like she might need to adopt instead of carrying her own baby. Like if the doctor says, and then we'd even had that talk, like, are we going to support her? It's her choice. Like, if she's like, no, I'm going to try. And like, knowing that that may kill her, or whatever, like, like hypothetically, like we're still making those choices for her, even when she's married to someone else. But, so no, those thoughts will already always be there. I do stop myself from a lot of them and just try to think more of what we had. And like I said, celebrate what we still very much have to live for. And two boys that did not ask for their sister's life to end, but certainly not their life just because their sisters did. And so we honor her how we can. But we still nurture the lives we've been entrusted that are still going. And, um, it won't go away. It won't entirely go away. Like I said, I'm hopeful that there's a day that what I now call landmines, like the things that you walk up on that overtake you, that you weren't prepared for. I'm hopeful that one day those will be sweetly welcomed, that it's like, oh, like a memory of my daughter crossed my path today. Um, and I think it will. Um, they do. I mean, they already do, but um, I'm hopeful that there will come a day that um, it's, it's lighter than it is dark. Um, and And again, just the idea that, Josh and I even had the conversation the other day, like, do you think that maybe one day we could leave grief share? And we both affirmatively said yes. If I had asked my husband that 10 years ago, he would have been like, mind your own business. like, no, I don't need to, I'm fine, they're fine, we're all fine. And so, like I said, like I'm hopeful in our progress, but I'm hopeful in what we have to impart on other people too because of this. And um, anyway,
Well, going on to what you have to impart in other people, if there was an opportunity where somebody just sat right down next to you right now, and they were going through something similar, is there a word of encouragement that you would have, like now in this space that you're in, this journey, departed from her for this long, that you would be able to share with somebody that's in that
yeah.
situation?
I told you. I mean, like, there's never going to be the right thing to say. I said, but I'm so so sorry this happened to you. I'm so so sorry that this is what you're living. Is always where I would start. Um, that never is unwelcome to hear. Like, just for someone to tell you, like, I see how badly you're hurting, and I'm very very sorry. Um, that never felt unwelcome. Um, I told you from a very, very practical aspect, I would say from day one, write down more than you think you need to. Um, show yourself grace, show your spouse grace. Do not compare grief with anyone. It serves no purpose. It serves no purpose. Um, it will birth resentment every time, you know. Um, and then, I mean, I think I just had a couple ladies say to me, like, it will not always feel this way. And you didn't even want to hear that. It felt good and it felt awful. But I can say it's been over 2 years. And I remember in the immediate days after thinking, oh my gosh, when people say they feel like their heart has been ripped out of their chest, that is not a turn of phrase. You literally feel like your body is gaping open. I don't feel that anymore. And it's hard to even physically remember feeling like that. I mentally remember feeling that. Um, so you will not always feel like you do in that moment. Um, and then, I mean, there is beauty from ashes. I mean, it's so true. Like if you take the hands that are being extended to you, so many people want to extend a hand. Um, but there is so much good. You know, I told the mom in the group that I'm in that lost her adult son recently, I said, let God show his love to you through other people like he will right now if you let them. Um, and so, I mean, those would be the things, I guess. There are no magic words, but
Be there when somebody's sitting in it. Just let them sit
Mhm.
in it. Just actually be in the grief. There is no timeline for it. Just be in the grief.
Yeah. And if you're not a calming personality type, do something else. I
Like
can
what?
remember there were some people that sat with me that it was like they just sat and they were such a calm, but it's like some people who, they know who they are. I mean, it's just like you have kind of a nervous energy and you need to be doing and you can't just sit, then do something, but don't sit there and
Be
be doing
anxious.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
don't anxious sit with me because your anxiety is gonna play into my
absolutely.
anxiety. And
Yeah, absolutely.
oh my goodness. Well, in closing, Lauren, I know this conversation, it was not easy. I thank you so much for having it with me. Thanks so much for being open and just giving us an open and safe space to talk about this. This was a beautiful conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
It was probably one I needed to have that I didn't know I did. So thank you.
I've been blessed to have you on board, buddy. Thanks so much.
You look
Um,
great.
you too. You look great also.
Thank
You look
you.
like you're still shining.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. Well, thanks for being on board. Thanks for being on the podcast with us. I know that grief can make us feel so isolated, but you being here today reminds us that we are all never truly alone in it.
Absolutely. And you're one of those extending hands. So thank you for what you do, Casie.
Love it. Thanks for letting me have this conversation with you so I can keep doing what I'm doing.
Absolutely, girl.
Bye,
All
buddy.
right. See you.
Wow, what a conversation. I hope today's episode gave you some valuable insights and tools to help you on your journey to healing and growth. Remember, it's not about perfection, it's about progress. Every step forward is a step worth celebrating. Now, before we wrap up, I want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you for being here. for taking the time to listen, and for being a part of this community. We're committed to changing the face of depression. As you know, Take Off the Mask and the work we do here at Change the Face of Depression operates on the generosity of listeners just like you. If today's episode resonated with you, please consider supporting us with a donation to help keep the conversation going. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps us continue creating content that spreads hope and understanding. You can learn more about how you can help and donate by visiting our website at changethefaceofdepression.com. Together, we're breaking the stigma and creating a world where mental health matters. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, keep taking off that mask. Your true self is worth showing to the world.